All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. Before we begin, I want to recognize Governor Moore, and I want to first start by saying it's nice to have a governor who really wants to work in partnership and public safety and actually comes to City Hall for the first time in many years. Thank you, Mr. Governor, for being here this morning. A governor who doesn't use Baltimore as a political talking point and shows up to help work for Baltimoreans because he understands the true value of this city, not just to itself, but to the state of Maryland. Also want to thank our Council President Cohen. I know the council president was on the mend. He looks and sounds better, so no one has to worry about getting sick. I think I may have made him sick, so I'm sorry, Mr. President. We also have with us Councilwoman Ramos, Councilman James Torrance, also known as the mayor's favorite Carver Care Bear, Councilman Paris Gray from the 8th District of Baltimore City, Councilman Mark Parker. I'm about to say Councilman Zach Blanchard, who I love very dearly, even though he coaches the wrong high school sports team in Baltimore. Councilman Antonio Glover, Councilwoman Felicia Porter, the Public Safety Chair, Councilman Mark Conway. Thank you all for being here. We have our Police Commissioner, Commissioner Worley, our Sheriff, Sam Cogan, our Deputy State's Attorney, Angela Giuliano, all of our Baltimore City public safety partners from GOCP, our federal partners from FBI, DEA, ATF, our community partners and community organizations that are here with us, all of the folks in Muncie and Safe Streets, everyone who's doing the crucial work on the ground to make Baltimore a safer place. And there are too many to name, but I'm going to try anyway. We have with us Roka, who does that work each and every day. YAP, the brothers of We Are Us, I guess technically that includes me too. Challenge the Change, the Peace Team, Let's Drive Baltimore, Beat 360, I said Safe Streets, Living Classrooms, Johns Hopkins Hospital, all of our partners at LifeBridge, just to name a few. And I want to be very clear that this diverse group of city agencies, partners, business leaders like Mark Thomas from the GBC, and community members that we have with us today demonstrates the intense coordination and collective willpower that has continued to make a difference here on the streets of Baltimore. Almost exactly a year ago today, many of these same partners that are with us today joined us as we talked about in this very room and acknowledged the historic, at that time, the historic 20% decrease in homicides we saw in 2023. At that time, we were recommitting ourselves to addressing public safety the right way and to discuss how we were going to continue those reductions the following year in partnership. That was the progress that we all began to see way back in the fall of 2022, driven by the establishment of the group violence reduction strategy in the Western District, while we were still dealing with the former governor and a host of other leaders who are no longer elected. I think it's safe to say that if it was not certain that we would see the same level of reductions heading into this year after the historic reduction in 2023, we did it. And we're confident that we'll continue to see the progress of our hard work. But in 2024, we saw that and more. We collectively, together, reduced homicides by another 23% on top of the numbers and push, yes. And pushed non-fatal shootings down by an impressive 34%. That is something that has never been done before in the city of Baltimore. 2 consecutive years breaking a record of reducing violence. And we want everyone to understand that we are not just going to stop there. Because on top of that, carjackings were down, auto theft was down, total and violent crime were down, and we had 74% fewer young people who were the victims of gun violence in Baltimore. And we have seen this sustained progress in back-to-back historic years in reducing homicides only because we have, as a city, invested in comprehensive evidence-based public health solutions to tackling the disease of gun violence in our community. We've paired community violence intervention alongside proactive and constitutional policing, pursuing public safety the right way, which is the only true way that it works. And that has enabled us to remove more than 2,500 illegal guns off the streets last year. Thank you to each and every one of the women and men in BPD who do that great work. And on top of that, they cleared nearly 70% of homicide cases, which is the highest clearance rate that they've had in over 25 years. It's about understanding how critical that role of law enforcement is, while simultaneously treating violence as a public health issue and understanding that the full weight of public safety should not fall on the shoulders of law enforcement alone. And again, I want to thank also all of our great federal law enforcement partners that work with BPD and all of us each and every day to get the people that we need off the streets, to get the guns off the streets so that we can build a better and safer Baltimore. In reality, though, this day is about partnership and giving credit to all of those who deserve it, who often don't get the spotlight. These numbers would not be possible without the important work being done by those men and women in BPD. All of our other law enforcement partners across the justice system, including the state's attorney, attorney general, the U.S. attorney, and at the state with Governor Moore at the helm and his team with Monsi and each and every community-based partner that we see here. And most importantly, every resident who dedicates to a safer community in their own community. This is the entire city of Baltimore's progress to highlight not any individuals. These results are driven by the very fact that our approach is comprehensive and that every single piece of the puzzle or every single piece of the crab gets the support and resources they need to be successful. Our expansion of GVRS, which now operates in the Western, Southwest, Central, and Eastern districts, will plan to expand citywide by the end of the year. Our community violence intervention ecosystem, Safe Streets, We Are Us, Challenge to Change, and so many others that I cannot name today, and law enforcement, all of them, from the first-year patrol officer to the experienced detective to the folks that are working in GVU, focusing in on those who are the most likely to be the victim or perpetrator of violence, to the person who is simply out there helping someone after they've been a victim of violence or crime in our city. We're demonstrating what's possible when we have all of these components working in harmony. While it's important to acknowledge that progress, you all know me very well. I think it's safe to say that we know it's not enough. Or as we say in We Are Us, one life is one too many. I was adamant that after the reductions in 2023, that we could not afford to just rest on our laurels and sit back. And while we've been able to maintain our momentum and achieve sustained year-over-year reductions, we are going to double and triple down on what we know works. I've given the clear direction to Deputy Mayor Barksdale, to BPD, to Monsi. All of our city agencies and our partners feel the same way. We won't rest. We will continue to push ourselves, to push others, to save more lives, get more guns off the streets, get more violent criminals off the streets, and break the vicious cycle of violence that has gripped neighborhoods and families in Baltimore for longer than I've been alive. We will continue to invest in holistic, evidence-based approach, support BPD each and every day, strengthen collaboration with our partners, expand GVRS to the Southern and beyond, and continue to invest in proven community violence intervention efforts. Because Baltimore deserves nothing less of us doing everything we can possible to preserve the lives of Baltimoreans. And while it may feel ambitious to stand here and say, we will work to see another year of significant reductions, I know that this partnership and the dedication and belief that this crowded room represents has the right tools to make it happen. Baltimoreans are counting on us, and together I know we can and will make it happen the only way that we can, and that is to do it together. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Governor Moore, and I'm going to read this order out for everyone, who will be followed by Commissioner Worley, to be followed by the Deputy State's Attorney, to be followed by Director Mavronis, to be followed by Dr. Bunley, who will be followed by Director Tyrone Kent from ROCA, then a representative from We Are Us, and then I will come back up. Mr. Governor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a joy to be with each and every one of you here. And Mr. Mayor, I just want to say, as ever and as always, it is a pleasure to be your partner inside this work. He was kind enough, it's good to be back in City Hall. He was kind enough to show me the office where I interned when I was at City Hall, just right across the way. But it is good to be back here because we see this is what partnership looks like, and these results are what partnership produces. When you have people who are all working together, people who understand that we all have an important and an individual role to make sure that our communities are safer, to make sure that they are thriving, to make sure that everyone who is proud to call themselves a Baltimorean and proud to call themselves a Marylander, that they have the right to exist in a community that sees them and supports them. This is what is required. This is what is necessary, this kind of partnership. Because we know that success is not singular. Anyone who tries to singularly claim credit for success is either naive, being silly, or truthfully, are just plain disingenuous. Because that's not how success happens. Success happens when you have people who are willing to band together to achieve a common goal. Making communities safer requires leadership and it requires collaboration. And you do not get here without those exact frameworks. You don't get here if it were not for the work and the leadership of the State's Attorney's Office. You don't get here had it not been for the work of our prosecutors and our public defenders. You don't get here without the leadership of law enforcement at local and state and at federal levels, the people who are willing to put on the uniform and serve our communities every single day valiantly. You do not get here without the leadership of our community groups and our grassroots organizations and our nonprofit organizations and community members themselves who say enough is enough and I need to be part of the solution myself. Everybody in this room has been invaluable in the work that they have done to create the kind of momentum that we are here to highlight, but I do want to take a moment to personally thank one person in particular, my partner in the work, and our city's mayor, Mayor Brandon Scott. This is a leader next to me whose feet are firmly planted in City Hall, but whose eyes stay on the horizon. Whose eyes stay on the horizon of a Baltimore soon to be. Because this is a person who was taken an improbable journey. From a young boy who wasn't supposed to graduate from high school, is now becoming the city's greatest champion. And I have to say, I could not be prouder to have Mayor Scott as a partner inside this work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, our administration in Annapolis has been very clear from day one that public safety is our #1 priority, that every single Marylander has a right to feel safe in their own community, has a right to feel safe in their own neighborhood, and has a right to feel safe in their own skin. Every single Marylander. And we said that this will be the moment that Maryland would end this scourge of violence that has held our communities hostage for far too long. That this will be the moment when we would not choose between increasing accountability and increasing opportunities, that we can and we would do both. And we also knew what we were walking into. That Marylanders from the Western Mountains all the way to the Eastern Shore and everywhere in between have felt unsafe in their own communities. That Baltimore City had endured 8 straight years of 300+ homicides every year. for the 8 years prior to our administration coming on board. That the state of Maryland saw an 8-year period where the non-fatal shooting rate in the state of Maryland doubled over an 8-year period. Where the state's chief executive failed to coordinate the different arms of our justice system, and as crime spiked, communication stopped, and people were failed. There were fundamental gaps in the system that could not wait to be fixed because the human consequences of waiting was staggering. So when we took office, the Maryland Coordination Analysis Center, or MCAC, helped to unify public safety efforts all across the state of Maryland in every single jurisdiction with the exception of one, Baltimore City, which was not included in MCAC. When we took office, our public safety agencies struggled to recruit and retain top talent. Our state's attorneys and U.S. attorney were in desperate need of more resources. State agencies weren't talking to each other, even if they had complete overlap in the work. So we knew that this state deserved better. And the only way that you get better is coordination and partnership, working together. So in our first year, we rolled out an all-of-the-above approach when it came to public safety, where we would actively work with our partners and stakeholders to communicate and coordinate to make sure we are addressing the crime fight. We delivered record funding support for local law enforcement. We delivered record funding support for the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center. In last year's budget, we secured over $3 million for Maryland state's attorneys. We funded community groups and created a first-of-its-kind initiative to disrupt childhood poverty and uplift the communities where violence is both the cause and the consequence. We directly funded the U.S. Attorney's Office. And Maryland is now proud to be one of the only states in the country that provides direct support to the Office of the U.S. Attorney so they have dedicated resources that they need to do their jobs. And the truth is, our success is not theoretical. Maryland has the receipts. Look at what's happened in these past 2 years. Not only were we able to collectively work to do things like, as the mayor highlighted, we're in the first year broke the back of 300, and in our second year, collectively, nearly broke the back of 200 homicides in Baltimore City, making this one of the most precipitous drops in homicides and violent crime in the entire country. But based on preliminary data, we are about to finish the first week of 2025. Yeah, let me not say it. With a pretty good start. With a pretty good start. And that hasn't happened as long as I can remember. You do not deliver these kind of results just because. You deliver them through partnership, through working together, to checking egos at the door and saying everybody has a role to play. And we need everybody to play their role. And the work has only begun. Because tomorrow is the first day of the legislative session, 2025 legislative session, and as we roll out our agenda, we will continue to prioritize public safety in the state of Maryland. This year's budget will propose an additional $122 million in local aid for police protection. This year's budget we will propose increased funding and coordination with the Department of Juvenile Services, including an additional $4.2 million to expand evidence-based community interventions. And our upcoming budget will also include funding to reopen the Catchison Treatment Center in Western Maryland and renovate the Maryland Youth Residence Center in Baltimore City. These investments will help our children with the most complex needs. These investments will make sure that we have places and spaces where we can reach Maryland's hardest to reach children. We're talking about kids who need the most care. We're talking about kids who have had some of the greatest challenges. We're talking about the kids who need the most support, and whether that's in custody of the Department of Juvenile Services or in care of the community, that we have to make sure that we have real accountability for those who break the law. And we have to make sure that we have supports for the people who break the law, that if they have an opportunity to have a second chance at life, those second chances must be available. And the supports must be in place to make sure that they are available, because if you have an opportunity, if you have a child who is a repeat offender, a child who is dealing with deep challenges, and if the only options that we have been able to present are either send them home or send them to an adult facility, we are failing. Provide the resources to be able to have additional supports so you can make sure that both, yes, we have to increase accountability and we have to increase opportunities. That's how we are going to get to a safer society. These investments are just a few pieces of the larger agenda that we will be rolling out starting tomorrow during the general session. And I look forward to further discussing these investments in public safety when we unveil our budget on Wednesday, January 15th. I'm proud of the work that we've gotten done together so far, and I'm humbled by the work ahead. And our commitment to the people, to the state of Maryland, is this: we will stay coordinated, we will stay vigilant, we will continue to make Maryland safer, and we will continue to move in partnership, because partnership produces progress and nothing else ever will. And I'm incredibly proud to be able to turn the microphone over to one of our tremendous partners inside of the work, who he and his team over at BPD continue every day to do remarkable work to not just set a standard in Baltimore City, but also across the state. Baltimore City Police Department Commissioner, Rich Worley.
This actually might be the toughest part of the job, as having to speak after the governor and the mayor. But thank you, Mayor Scott and Governor Moore, for your continued support of BPD as we continue to lower crime in our great city, especially gun violence. I'm proud to stand here alongside many of our other partners. We had to discuss another year of historical violence dropping. At the same time, we acknowledge there's plenty of work that still needs to be done. This was a result of hard work and partnerships of everyone here, but most importantly, one that a lot of us forget to mention is our community. The community, like the governor said, the community had had enough. There's starting to be better partnerships with the department, and our department is working better to increase our community policing plan, to the point that we're making partnerships within the community and getting more and more tips every single day. Even in the midst of the lowest staffing shortages that we've seen in many years, the members of our department have increased our clearance rates, conducting more proactive patrols, expanding our victim services unit, and above all, improving outcomes for those at-risk individuals. While we've seen a sharp decline in a lot of crime categories, one of the most important ones, as the mayor has already brought up, the 74% reduction in juvenile victims. Our young people, that equates to a number of 57 less young people were the victim of a homicide or a shooting in just 1 year. Together, all of us are here to unite in this building for our city, ensuring that the residents and visitors feel safe when they come and visit the city and when they live in the city. I'd be remiss if I didn't brag. I know I'm a little biased with my men and women at BPD, but I would put them up against anybody in the country. They've done a fabulous job, and I'm proud to be the commissioner and lead them. Each and every day to go above and beyond to respond to the needs of the community and the efforts that do not go unnoticed by everyone. As we look to 2025, I'm optimistic that we will continue to build on the record numbers that we've had the last few years. Thank you very much. I will now turn it over to Deputy State's Attorney Angela Galliano.
Thank you, Commissioner Worley. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deputy State's Attorney Angela Galliano, Chief of Staff of the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office. On behalf of State's Attorney Ivan Bates and our team of dedicated prosecutors, victim witness coordinators, law clerks, paralegals, and administrative staff, we join everyone here with the shared hope that comes with the realization of improved public safety and lives saved. I'd like to, of course, acknowledge Governor Wes Moore, Mayor Brandon Scott. Thank you for having us here today. All of the other wonderful and dedicated council members who are here today. I will not attempt to name all of you for fear of missing one, but thank you very much, Mayor Scott, for helping us out with that one. I'd like to acknowledge also, I believe, the Assistant Special Agent in charge of ATF, Joe Purcell, is here. There we go, U.S. Attorney Gerald. Thank you. Also, Assistant U.S. Attorney Gerald Collins and GBC President Mark Thomas. I believe I saw him earlier as well. Oh, there we go. And obviously, it is a concerted effort. I'd also like to acknowledge MONSE Director Stephanie Mavronis and, of course, BPD Commissioner Richard Worley and everyone else who is here to join us today. I think that what Mayor Scott and Governor Moore relayed is the theme, right? It is partnership and it is collaboration, and this is the result of what that type of work can do when you are led by the type of leaders that lead us today, and we are all grateful for your leadership. We're thankful for our collaboration with the Baltimore Police Department and their officers and detectives who risk their lives every day, helping to make these arrests possible. We appreciate our strengthened interagency partnerships with the U.S. Attorney's Office through the leadership of U.S. Attorney Eric Barron, ATF Special Agent in Charge Tony Crosby, Baltimore City Sheriff Sam Cogan, and various others who have helped to make these strides possible. Since 2023, the State's Attorney's Office has secured convictions for more than 2,000 individuals who were charged with illegal possession of a firearm after being convicted of a felony, those who were selling drugs while carrying a firearm, and those who committed a murder. These individuals were sentenced to incarceration with a minimum of 5 years without the possibility of parole, resulting in an average of 1,064 violent offenders being removed from Baltimore streets annually under the Bates administration. With more violent offenders being held accountable with incarceration, would-be trigger pullers are removed from our city, and we are seeing record lows in the violent crime that has plagued Baltimore for decades. We appreciate the continued support of Governor Moore as we continue to pursue the state's attorney's mission in rebuilding the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office. Most notably, the governor allocated over $1 million in funding to help us build out our body-worn camera unit, in our body-worn camera staff, which is housed within our evidence review unit, allowing an increase in support staff and more manageable caseloads, which leads to greater effectiveness as we seek justice on behalf of city residents. Through his Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, we received grant resources that allowed us to sustain our victim witness services, ensuring they have the support they need to assist victims across the city. Since State's Attorney Bates was elected in the State's Attorney's Office, we have added more than 40 additional prosecutors among several other support staff, allowing for the support and experience necessary to achieve this historic decline in violent crime. Our efforts and the successes we've experienced are just the beginning. As we look forward to continuing the concerted efforts that we have with our collaborating partners, we also look forward to improving public safety, and the State's Attorney remains committed to improving the overall quality of life for every city resident and visitor, because they deserve to enjoy it in this, which is what we know to be one of the greatest cities in America. Thank you, and now I will turn it over to MONSE Director Stephanie Mavronis.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Governor Moore. I'm Stephanie Mavronis. I serve as the Director at the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Just want to echo that progress is the result of everyone. So many people in this room, so many people doing the work on the ground. We have seen immense buy-in from community partners and residents. We've seen unity around our shared mission to save lives, to connect people in need with resources in real time. And each play our role in this most important work. These reductions are only possible through the co-production of public safety, but we cannot and we will not stop until we're addressing every single life in Baltimore. When the mayor created our agency, Monsi, at the start of his first term, he tasked us with the implementation of Baltimore's first ever multi-year comprehensive violence prevention plan. This is about addressing public safety beyond the 3 Ps of policing, prisons, and prosecution. We knew that this work wouldn't happen overnight, but we knew how important it was to build a strong foundation, and we're seeing the fruits of that labor today. Our team and our partners have been working tirelessly to not just build, but rebuild, design the programs and systems necessary to produce long-term public safety in partnership with so many other agencies represented here today. We want to make sure that these reductions we're seeing are not just for 2 historic years, but that we're sustaining these declines of violence, and we will see anything short of that as not a success. We're seeing the fruits of our shared labor, as I mentioned. GVRS expanded into 4 districts with another on the horizon. We had 6 of our Safe Street sites reach more than 365 days without a homicide in their catchment zone this year. We've served, let's give a round of applause. We've served nearly 400 victims, helping provide real-time resources and prevent retaliation. We've coordinated 26 neighborhood stabilization responses across the city in this year. We've reestablished reentry work at a local government level. We're making safe return plans for residents who are preparing to return home from incarceration. And making sure that they're connected with the resources they need to be successful. And as we move into 2025, we continue to have ambitious goals on the horizon. We want to work towards full implementation of our work, sustainability of our work. That means expanding GVRS into the Southern District and to the rest of the city. That means strengthening our victim services coordination even more between BPD, the State's Attorney's Office, Monsi, and other community-based partners. That means continuing to drive important victim services reforms. We want to continue to fully activate and coordinate our community violence intervention ecosystem, scale our youth diversion work, and even start the process of our second comprehensive violence prevention plan as we are on the second to last year of that implementation. We're always going to let the data guide our work, and there will be an emphasis on evaluation and accountability. But I want to turn it over now to one of my favorite agency directors who's been essential in this work as well, Dr. Andre Bunley from Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement. Dr. Bunley.
Mayor Scott, Governor Moore, we, the people of Baltimore and the state of Maryland, want to really thank you all for your very clear-eyed leadership. We have so much work to do. We have to save life. And so our sole mission, my colleagues and I, is to ensure that we take care of the youth and young adults in this city. We have to train them up. What does that mean? Ensuring that we connect them to success. And so in that process, that's one of the reasons the mayor said to me personally that it is very important, Doc, to make certain that there are real, ready, and relevant resources for our young people. What are real resources? That they really exist and they know they exist. That they're ready. They're available not when we say they're needed, but when they say they're needed. And that they are relevant, that they are individualized to speak to their particular need. And so when we talk about these real, ready, and relevant resources, we're talking about, when we talk about our young people, our children get allowance. Other people's children who don't have those resources, we have to find a way to give them an opportunity to pay a cell phone bill. So we put them to work, as we did. The mayor made the call and said, make certain, Doc, that the youngsters are out there taking care of our senior citizens, shoveling their walkways. And then the process that we use to allow them for their hard work. That's real stuff. And so I'm just excited that we're going to save more lives in Baltimore. I'm looking forward to the day where we're not talking about violence reduction. We're just talking about making certain that our children are on positive and constructive pathways forward. And the reason that they're going forward on positive and constructive pathways because they're not on negative and destructive pathways going in the wrong direction. And so that's only going to happen if we individualize this approach. So that's why I love the fact that so many partners from the streets are being led into this process who have familiarity with our young people and their families. Because I know personally, having been one and then having been an educator of others, that it is very difficult, but very possible to help other people's children. And there has to be a specific and a conscious process to do that. Thank you very much. And I'd like to bring up my colleague who is 10 toes down in the work, Tyrone Kent from Roca.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Scott and Monzi, for inviting Roca here today to join, and more importantly, for your leadership and your partnership. I have been engaged in youth work and violence prevention for more than 25 years, and I am proud to say that the partnership and collaboration amongst the city, leadership, and law enforcement and community agencies has never been nearly as strong and effective as it is today. A big part of what makes the collaboration so effective is the comprehensive nature of the resources around the table that allow us to address the root causes of violence with holistic strategies that include housing, education, employment, and mental health. All of us at Roca Baltimore is incredibly grateful to play a role in the larger effort to reduce violence and save and change the lives of our young men. We are using brain science and non-clinical version of cognitive behavior therapy. We call it Rewire CBT, to help young men heal the trauma that is at the root of violence and provide them the skills they need to achieve a long-term behavior change. We see the changes big and small in the young men in our program, and the data we collect confirms the effectiveness of the model. In FY24, we supported 451 of the highest risk young men in the city of Baltimore. Of those in the program, 24 months or longer, 80% have no new arrests and 92 had no new incarcerations. But sadly, we also lost young people due to violence this year. And like everyone here, we are not satisfied with the progress made to date and are steadfast in our commitment to do all we can do to support the mayor's efforts to continue to reduce the number of homicides in our city. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Captain Muhammad.
Yeah, can they come up real fast? Yeah, please. I just want everybody to see our team because the message is going to reflect what I'm about to say. But I want to first thank God for this opportunity. I want to thank the governor. I want to thank the mayor, the state attorney, all the leaders that's here today. Back in 2018, Baltimore had 309 murders. 275 of the murders was black men. And 175 of the murders was headshots. And I was working with Dr. Bunley at that time in the MOAM office. I was a deputy director. And we took that data. And 2018, I resigned from the mayor's office, and we started We Are Us. And the reason why we did that, because we just believe at that time it wasn't enough support around the homicides and the shootings for black men, what the data said. So, and this is, after doing this work myself for 18 years, I am one of the co-founders of We Are Us. Me personally, I realized that we couldn't do this work by ourselves, right? So we had to diversify what we was doing, but also we went around the city, myself and Dr. Bunley, meeting with bishops and pastors and ministers, people who was just tired of the killings and the shootings. So we are us was birthed off of homicides and shootings, not jobs, not food, not training, not juvenile justice, not DOC, not conflict mediation, 100% homicides and shootings. So we needed men that feared God, but also understood how to engage shooters, how to engage men and women that was doing things that the governor, the mayor, the state attorney understood what happened, need to fix, but they needed to bring us in, right? Because I don't expect the mayor to do what I do, but I can't do what the mayor do either, right? I can't do what he do, right? We always talk about that. No, but being very sincere, you know, we have a strategy, we are us, but we love this work, right? So it's love allows us to go into the trenches, go into these communities that nobody want to go in, and talk to these young men with guns on them, with drugs on them, and help them to identify the needs and the things that they need to help themselves to be better, productive young men. So, and the mayor gets it. And I want to thank these two men, because the way I see it, they special to us, very special to us. Yeah. Because if the leadership don't support the boots on the ground, trust me, the impact is not where that is. No such thing as under 300 murders, because they can't reach the people we reach. And I'm thankful for the commissioner. I'm thankful for the chief of the school police. These are our partners, right? So without them, we're not successful. So it's an honor to be a Baltimorean, and I'm thankful that we have a mayor that's from Baltimore, because the accountability is more, he's more responsible the way I see it. The way I see it. And I'm from Park Heights as well. But we're looking forward to getting these murders down. We're looking forward to getting these shootings down. We're looking forward to flipping this city and making it the great city we know it can be. We committed to this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Cap. What Cap really meant to say is that he doesn't allow me to go deep into the streets with the brothers anymore. That's the truth of the matter. I'm no longer allowed. But thank you, and thank you again for every one of our partners for being here today. And now we will go to questions from the media. And we're just going to ask you to come to the mic up there, because everyone's recording. We don't want any sound issues. Oh, hold on 1 second, you guys. Apparently we're having technical difficulties.
All right, are y'all getting it now? Give me a thumbs up. All right, they're getting it now. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, this is for Governor Moore, Elizabeth with WMAR. You mentioned how state agencies previously weren't working closely together, especially when their work overlapped. That seemed to be very true the last couple of years between the state's attorney's office and DJS. Have you noticed an improvement there, and can you give a specific example?
Absolutely. I think, we have to remember that a lot of the challenges that we were seeing between the various agencies, and whether they be state agencies amongst themselves or state agencies with local agencies, these were longstanding problems. And so we knew when we came on board, we had to not just reform the internals within the system, but also reform the way these organizations are actually communicating and how they're actually speaking. And if you take a look at what's happening right now between DJS and what's happening also with state's attorneys, you're seeing a marked difference and a marked coordination change about what happens once a child is inside of the system, about what's happening once information is being shared. And so while we know there's always consistently work that needs to be done, this work has begun, and it's begun in a place where we understand the deficit and the hole that we entered into, but we've already started to see real impacts about how increased coordination, what it looks like.
Thank you. And then for Deputy State's Attorney, do you want to say something, Mayor?
I don't want to speak for the governor, but I want to just add on to what he's saying from the local level, right? I think you heard the governor talk about expanding some of the work. Actually, he and I were just talking earlier, following my meeting with the police department early this morning, about how we even have a better partnership between the police and DJS. When you talk about thinking and focusing in on those young people who are at the highest risk and those who we've seen and dealt with multiple times, we've been able to work with DGS around making sure that we're communicating around them and what's happening, and with the state's attorneys and his team as well, so that we can understand the public safety for everyone, for the people who are victims, for those very young people, and whoever else. And we're going to be looking to continue that. And I think the governor hinted at something, and this, I have to give him deep credit and the secretary credit for this. They came and asked me about some of the things that we were doing in GVRS and are using it for their Thrive Academy. In fact, they use We Are Us to help with those high-risk young people, which we know through MOAIM and We Are Us and Baltimore Brothers has been proven to work when you do that work. And when you see them expanding that work, expanding the state's investment into public safety agencies that, I will say again, that were obliterated for 8 straight years, you can see that they're truly committed to the work.
Thank you. And then Deputy State's Attorney Galliano, not that we're not happy to have you here, just curious, is there a reason why State's Attorney Bates is not present?
Thank you, yes. State's Attorney Bates had a conflict in his schedule. He just wasn't able to be here today.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Tara Lynch, WJZ. Mayor, you and I sat down last week. We talked about 201 homicides. We talked about that's progress, of course, but 201 lives that are lost. How do you reconcile that as we stand here today?
Well, just the way I did last week, right? I think that we feel for every single one of those families in those communities. Those are 201 families that don't have a loved one. Those are thousands of more people in those communities dealing with the trauma of seeing or hearing or knowing that individual. And that's why we're all just as committed, even more committed today than we were last year, because when you can see, and this is not a moment of celebration, this is a moment of acknowledgement that we were at a point where reporters and everyone else for the first 2 years that I was in office asked me every single day, Mr. Mayor, when is that 15% goal that you have to reduce in Baltimore's homicides going to happen? Mr. Mayor, when is it going to be that the city doesn't have 300 homicides, right? We have to acknowledge that we didn't just do that. We far exceeded that now 2 years in a row, and we can acknowledge that we can do even better. You don't hear any of us celebrating because, like I said earlier, one life is one too many. And if you know someone, right, I don't think that anybody that has lived in Baltimore more than 5 years does not know someone who's been the victim of gun violence, right? The folks that I know, when you've lost people, when you've, like me, been in Annapolis testifying on public safety bills to find out at that very moment that one of your best friend's brothers is gone, it hits different from you. When you've been the person ducking those bullets that Dr. Bunley and others had to come to my elementary school to talk to us about how we deal with it as a young child, it's different for you. So this is not us celebrating. This is us saying, look, Baltimore, we are not only achieving this reduction, we're achieving it at a higher rate than cities around the country, and that's why we have to be committed to being better every day.
And another question for you, this is probably for you and the commissioner. We've talked about juvenile crime quite a bit. I think all of us have with all of you. I spoke with someone today who was a victim of juvenile crime in Federal Hill. He was hit with a broomstick. He's lost vision in his right eye. John Berardi, I know you've probably...
we know him very well.
What do you say to those victims? Because we're talking about crime overall. What do you say to victims of juvenile crime and aggravated assaults and things like that who are frustrated and might not feel safe in your city?
Yeah, I think that, listen, we understand that we don't want anybody to be a victim of any kind of crime, no matter whether it's property crime, violent crime, juvenile crime, adult crime. As I always say, I don't care if you're 3 years old, which we don't know they do, 10 years old, 14 years old, or 60. You shouldn't be out there committing acts of violence. And to that gentleman, every victim, this is why we're committed to that work. This is why we're committed to working with all of our partners to make sure that every part of the system is not only talking, but working to the highest levels, right? Again, we're not celebrating anything. We want to make sure that we're holding, as the governor said, holding those young people accountable while also correcting and investing in them to change their life so that they don't do that for the rest of their lives. We can get to them, many of them now, because they're still young, but we can do that while also holding them accountable for their actions and, most importantly, letting them see the negative impact that they've had on someone's life. I know for me, personally, as the victim of gun violence, I didn't get complete healing until I was able to sit across from that young man who robbed me all those many years ago, and we had a real man-to-man conversation to the point where a few weeks later, it was me working to help him get out of prison and be able to get back on his feet so he didn't have to get to that point. That's what we have to understand about all those levels, and we're going to continue to drive down all crime, including juvenile crime.
One off topic for the governor, just regarding the Key Bridge reconstruction process. I know that there was some preliminary elements that were supposed to begin today, delayed due to weather. Any sort of update that you can provide?
Yeah, the update is we're proud that the work has now begun. We knew when this tragedy happened, nearly a year ago, that this would be a significant uphill battle. And when we said that there were 4 objectives that we laid out for the people of the state, that we would bring closure and comfort to the families of the 6 individuals who we lost, that we would reopen the federal channel, that we would make sure that everyone who was directly impacted by the Key Bridge crisis, including the port workers and their family members, that they will be supported, and that we would rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge. We're proud to say that on all of those elements, we are now on track, and we're thankful for the bipartisan support that we received for the 100% cost share, because it means that while the Key Bridge unfortunately collapsed during our time, the Key Bridge will also be rebuilt on our watch, and that work has already begun.
Thank you both.
Alexa?
Hello, Happy New Year to you all.
Happy New Year.
Looking for a direct response from the mayor first on this. Of course, we talked about the expansion of GVRS. In a recent interview with our station, the city state's attorney, when asked, said that he did not believe GVRS was the main driver of homicides and rather pointed to targeting of repeat violent offenders. Your response to that?
Well, I guess there's a few things here that I would say. First and foremost, the drop in homicides actually started in the fall of 2022 before the state's attorney took office, right? And we're going to continue to let folks know that reality. But when you think about those targeting of violent repeat offenders, right, we have to understand that starts with the women and men of the Baltimore Police Department, which is led by my commissioner, and that I, as the mayor of Baltimore, and the commander-in-chief is, right? So when you think about prosecuting people who had guns on them illegally in the city, that starts here in this building in the direction that we give to BPD every day. But more importantly, it starts with those women and men. So anybody that is trying to say anything otherwise is not talking the truth, because they are the ones making the arrests. They are the ones putting their lives on the line. They are the ones who are identifying and going after consistently those individuals who are committing those acts of violence. And when you think about, I don't want to turn into a law professor or a public safety government professor about how government works. The executive's job is to enforce the laws. And when you think about our partner in the state's attorney, who will remain our partner, right? You think about our ability, the police department's ability, to send them every single day the highest quality of cases, clearing 70% of homicides, that allows them to do their great work that they do every day to prosecute those cases. But those cases are made on the backs of the women and men of the Baltimore Police Department, and I'm going to stand 20 toes down on understanding, for people understanding that reality. But since you brought up the GVRS, I think that we have to also be reminded that we are talking about those very same people. We're talking about a focus on the people who are the most likely to be those trigger pullers, or to have those trigger pullers go after them. And we've arrested 356 individuals through GVRS who are of that quality. And you have been at plenty of them, Alexa. When you talk about GVRS takedowns, when we're talking about taking down organizations that we know were connected to violence, that started with those investigations led by the Group Violence Unit in the Baltimore City Police Department. And we know that the State's Attorney has prosecuted over 280 of those most violent people through GVRS. And that's really all we have to say today, but I think that we have to be reminded about this partnership. The reality is, Alexa, you were one of those very people that asked me every single day when we're going to reach my goal of hitting 15%. And now we have this change, and I think that I'll give, because the Ravens are going to beat the Steelers this weekend, I'll give a football analogy. We are all a part of a team. That's the reality. And when you think about the city of Baltimore, the mayor's the quarterback, right? I am the person that ultimately everyone's going to look at when things go bad. That's the reality. And when we have folks that are part of this team, we have, the commissioner may be Derrick Henry, right? We might have someone else that is Zay Flowers. We don't need any Deontay Johnsons that are refusing to come to the table and be partners. Thank you.
We've had situations where people have been either injured or killed by a defendant who was already wanted by police. Collectively, what are you all doing to better address the issue of unserved warrants?
Well, I think that we all are going to continue to serve as those warrants as possible. I think that we know that's a very difficult job. WATF for us has the highest level of them, working with our partners in the marshal's office, working with the sheriff's office. They all do a great job of going out and trying to find those people, but it's not as easy as people think. Sometimes folks are in different states, right? Sometimes they have to be brought back here. We all know infamously we had that individual after the Patterson High School incident that was going to another country. We're going to continue to do that work each and every day. But more importantly, we're going to try to prevent those people from being back out on the street in the first place. We're going to continue to take them off the streets and give cases to our partners in the state's attorney, in the U.S. attorney, in the attorney general that remove them from our neighborhoods, period.
Maybe the commissioner or another agency can weigh in if any changes are going to be put in place to better, more swiftly track down these offenders?
I think that no one else needs to add. We're not going to give you law enforcement strategy about how we're going to track down criminals. I don't think the U.S. Marshal's Office or the police department, our public safety agencies are all smart enough to know we're not going to talk out loud about how we're going to track criminals because they watch your station.
Well, will there be changes?
Again, Alexa, there are always changes into our public safety strategy. We make changes every single day, and we'll continue to do that.
Barry Sims, WBAL TV. Mayor, twice we've heard about the expansion of GVRS. Where is it going next? How's it going to go? You're trying to get it done by the end of the year. Can you give us some statistics or some information as to where it's going to be going?
The Southern District is next. Southern District is the next district, and then we'll go from the Southern throughout the rest of the city. Now, we can't tell you, Barry, which district is going to be after the Southern because the data tells us that, right? This isn't like some of the previous times when we've had GVRS and it was basically done in a political manner. We let the data say where we should go next based on the connectivity of groups, based on the connectivity of violence. Again, we are talking about evidence-based proven practices, right? And you don't have to just believe the mayor, right? We have academic research, right, by world-renowned folks that shows this strategy is working, whether it's folks at UPenn, the folks at Hopkins, everyone is saying that the strategy collectively that we have is working, and we're going to stick with that and expand it throughout the city, but we are going to do it responsibly because one of the things that I heard consistently from my technical assistance partners is that one of the reasons why we failed at GVRS the previous two times is because we tried to grow too fast. You have to do it in a responsible, data-driven manner.
And final questions dealing with, in a little while, you're going to have a vigil for victims of last year. What message do you have for those families?
That we will never not be with them. That our detectives, if their case isn't solved, is going to continue to work on these cases, and that the entire city government, the entire city is going to be standing with them for whatever they need, and we're never going to forget about them. I know for me, I don't forget about those people. I don't forget about those phone calls. I don't forget about the funerals of people that we lose, and seeing that hurt on people's eyes, especially when we lose young people, and seeing that hurt in family members' faces. So we'll never forget them, and we'll be here to support them and also work with them to prevent it from happening from other folks. I met a young lady who the other day who started an organization after her son was murdered, and she just thanked me for stepping up to help her in that situation. And I didn't know it at the time, but she now partners with Monsi to help in this ecosystem of healing people, and we're just thankful to individuals like her. All right. Thank you, everybody.